but I was told that he told his stream that I was acting in bad faith.
Oh, I think he did. I think we watched a clip of that. I'm gonna watch this. I'm just curious what he said.
Usually he is. Oh, he isn't good faith at all. That's pathetic, dude.
The situation right now with Ukraine. Have you seen Kyle Kulinski's?
It's kind of weird because like, if he technically, him running and winning in a way might be like a good thing for Democrats because if we're what?
Are you getting into like accelerationist stuff here?
No, fuck no.
Okay.
Just shrewd political strategy. If it is the case that Democrats are absolutely going to lose the next election, Trump is probably one of the best guys to lose to, because if he wins...
If you had to give a letter grade to Biden's presidency so far, what would you give him and why?
I would have to think about it, but the lowest I would give him would be an A-. I never would have expected any major legislation in a Congress that's split 50-50. I've never thought, I would have thought there's just no way, it's impossible. So I think that the fact that he was able to get the, was it the American Rescue Plan?
Yep.
And then the $1.9 trillion of coronavirus stimulus, for once in like our lives, America actually went so above and beyond stimulus. It was insane. We were fourth in the world at stimulus per capita or per GDP.
Percentage of GDP.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure we were one in the world for stimulus per capita per person. The unemployment insurance was just insane. We got two $2,000 stimulus checks. One of them was split in half, or one was like $1,400 and $600. The other was $2,000. Yeah, I think in terms of getting the major piece of legislation back, Biden did the impossible. He got some Republican senators, 15, 16 to sign on to it. I thought it was really impressive. He actually committed to the Afghanistan timeline, even though the pullout maybe could have gone a little bit cleaner. He did it. We left. Yeah, I don't know. I have a lot of respect. It has gone better than I thought it would have. Absolutely.
I agree with the idea that it's gone better than... I mean, we didn't even know if we would have control of the Senate like right after the election. So, I mean, those two Georgia elections were crucial.
Holy
but
shit, yeah. Imagine if we lost even one of them. It's like, you're fucked, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. We're going to live through that gridlock after November in all likelihood. Which, you know, this is just the way things go in this country. But I mean, I thought I was similarly very impressed with the ARP on the substance of that bill. You know, I get excited about some of the aspects of the infrastructure package. I know that it's not going to be something that necessarily pays dividends right away, and it might take, you know, a period of several months or years for impact of that bill to really be felt. And so it's hard for Biden to get out there and tout that as a political win. But I would say his vaccination efforts really early on, and let's be honest, that was like the number one issue for voters, was to elect somebody that was going to help us get through this pandemic in the most efficient way. And the voters decided that Trump just wasn't that guy. And so his efforts to assist the states with the vaccine rollout was substantial and huge and consequential. The ARP was a big deal. I think the infrastructure package is a big deal as well.
Something that's really frustrating to me that a lot of people don't realize is when the coronavirus pandemic started and was carrying on, a lot of state and city budgets were fucked because they weren't making money because people weren't out buying shit and a lot of their revenues were down. There were a lot of cities and states that had budgets that were like pretty big in the red. They were pretty fucked. And a big part of the 1.9 trillion, I forget the name of it, the coronavirus relief thing, that package, one of the big parts was shoring up like every budget of all the cities and states. Like there were cities who were like hundreds of millions of dollars in the red were now like awash with money, like super in the black. Like they started doing like vaccine fucking lotteries and shit. They had so much money. But nobody seems to remember that or give credit to Biden for that. Like, yeah, there's so much shit, but yeah.
Well, the Republicans were hugely opposed to giving money to the states. They called them blue state bailouts, which was just, of course, absurd.
Yeah.
But what I was going to say was that, you know, as impressed as I was at the beginning, like I felt really optimistic. I even felt optimistic about the midterms. I'm like, after they got the ARP passed, I couldn't believe Manchin signed on to that stuff, to be honest. Like I was shocked that he signed on to that. But with Build Back Better, the negotiations pretty much stalling out, and no real hope of a comprehensive bill to replace it in the future. Ever since that point, I've been sort of not souring on his presidency, but I would give him like a B or a B plus, because a few things. There was I felt like his administration did a premature victory lap right before July 4th last year, where it was sort of like their mission accomplished George W. Bush moment, where Biden got up there and talked about how we had defeated the virus and how everything was going to go back to normal. And we knew that there was a potential for variance, and he clearly overpromised. And it was right around that time that his poll numbers sank. I mean, obviously a big part of that had to do with the Afghanistan pullout and the coverage of it, and some of the awful footage that we saw of people falling out of airplanes and shit. But I don't think, but I also think that his overpromising on coronavirus probably contributed to that decline as well. And then also the fact that I don't know how his administration missed the importance of testing and masks before the holiday season. We're getting free tests now, which is good. This is a step in the right direction, but did they not have anyone advising them in the cabinet that we should expect either another variant or we should expect another spike because of holidays? And therefore, because so many people have refused to get the vaccine, why don't we preemptively prepare for this? Because vaccines aren't the only tool in the tool shed that we have. We can also do testing and that sort of thing too. And I think the fact that they were late to that, I think is a very clear mistake. I think you could point to.
I think that the difficult thing, where do you stand on vaccine mandates? Like the OSHA stuff?
Big fan.
So
I say strap them to fucking gurneys and just forcibly inject them at this point.
So the thing that I have, so I'm in terms of
put it in the water, put it in the water supply. Just fucking.
I agree as a matter of public health and everything, but I think politically, I feel like a lot of this is kind of I think these are loser political ideas at this point. I don't know how much the administration factors in everything at this point. But there's probably a lot of fatigue related to everything having to do with the coronavirus stuff now. And I do remember this. This might have even been the last holiday season. There were some Democrats saying be careful for family meetings, or maybe you should do distance stuff or only immediate family. And I remember even Republicans were picking up on even those. It's oh, we can't even see our family members. This is bullshit, blah, blah, blah. So I do wonder a little bit how much they factor in the political cost to some of the messaging, because the fatigue is so high among voters. I'm not sure.
Well, I know that it flipped. I know that the mandates had, I think 60% approval when they were first announced, and then it flipped to 40. So the sustained campaign by the right wingers, you can say that it worked.
Well, I can be more generous. I don't think it's just the sustained campaign from the right wingers. I think there is genuine fatigue where it's oh, Jesus fuck, can we be done with this already? I do think there is some genuine fatigue among the population, especially as the variants, as they come out, they've been a little bit less lethal. The important people that need to be vaccinated are. I'm empathetic towards somebody that's can we be done with this and move on from it?
I'm not. I mean, the only reason why I don't have a lot of empathy for those people are the healthcare workers and the strain that's been put on nurses and doctors and healthcare employees all over the country right now. And I think that if Democrats centered the incentivizing effort on just keep it front and center on the healthcare strain, then I think you can get people to do things go back to 6 feet, wear a mask, and get boosted. If you just hammer it, these people are getting
I think the Democrats
obliterated.
They lost that battle, I think. And I would say that they lost that battle because I think they exaggerated the hospitalizations too much early on. I don't think you can play that angle anymore. I think that a huge mistake that Democrats made was, and even I fell for some of this initially, was the constant, the hospitals are overflowing, all of them are overflowing, all of them are at max capacity. Hearing this over and over and over and over again, and then the months go on and it's wait, I don't know if this is true anywhere. There are a couple counties that have issues, but largely these were, I'm going to say, exaggerated, if not entirely fabricated. I think that once you've kind of outwardly lied about that so much, it seems hard then to be well, look at our staff. They really are overworked. They really are, these are real problems or whatever. I think you lose a lot of credibility there. Kind of governments in general. You remember I know you remember this, when like the bird flu came out, and like it seemed like every 2 to 4 years there was like the next flu pandemic that was going to wipe out civilization, and it was like, oh, 30,000 died this year. It was just like kind of a bad flu, and it didn't happen. I think that hearing about the hospitals overflowing so many times, you even had oh god, I'm hoping she misspoke, but when Sotomayor, the judge, was saying that there were like 100,000 kids seriously ill in ICUs from Omicron and shit.
Yeah.
I feel like it's hard for the normal population. They're looking at it like, this is bullshit. Like, I'm not going to buy it. I don't believe anybody's overworked now. I think it's all like a lie. Or if they are so overworked, why are you forcing them out with vaccine mandates and shit? I just think politically, these are really hard issues to tackle at this point.
I think, I mean, I disagree with you because, like, who was saying that every single hospital in the country was overwhelmed?
I was hearing this. I would have to go back and look, but I was hearing constantly that hospitals are going to be overwhelmed. Hospitals are going to be overwhelmed, that the capacities are reached. I feel like I saw tweets and people talking about it. Maybe I'm crazy, but I feel like I heard this quite a bit.
But I mean, that doesn't necessarily mean every hospital in the country. Like,
but that's what it sounded like. That's what people were saying. That like everything was going to be overloaded. That's why we've got to flatten the curve. All the hospitals are going to be fucked. And
not to me. When I heard that, I just assumed they were talking about like bigger metropolitan areas.
Sure, but even at that, I don't even think that's been the case, generally speaking.
I think generally speaking, the hospitals have been strained by the Omicron wave more than at any other point in the pandemic. And when you look at the hospitalization rate, it's higher now than it ever was.
Yeah, I do agree that hospitals are strained. But it always felt like we were being presented with it kind of like climate change. It always felt like we were getting a doomsday scenario so frequently, and then when they don't come, I think you build like an apathy to it after a while. I agree that there are, just to be clear on my position, I agree that there are definitely problems with hospital strains. I don't know if you remember, I'm sure you do, even before the coronavirus period, there are like worldwide shortages of like hospital staff. It's always been like a big problem, like getting people to, and then this has just made it even worse. So there's definitely a problem, but I can feel the apathy from people, like hearing another report of like, oh, this is a huge issue, like, oh my god, it's going to reach overflowing, and it's like, okay, well, it hasn't yet, and it seems like we kept hearing it was going to. So, but maybe we're just like seeing different media things for that. I'm not sure.
And we saw that CDC guidance come out, I think like a month ago, where they were talking about changing the quarantine times
from 10 to 5 days.
From 10 to 5 days, and they did it. A lot of people, especially I think like a lot of people on the left, assumed that it had to do with like Walmart's profit margins.
It was because of stupid fucks like Hasan cheerleading because of a couple dumb fucking tweets they saw. Yeah.
Super I actually dumb. Like I don't think he'll talk to me anymore after that, because I like jumped in his thread and I cited a report that was actually from the year before, and I erroneously thought it was from that year. It was like an innocent mistake. I think we've all made mistakes like that where we get the date wrong when we look at something. Yeah. And then as soon as I realized my mistake, I deleted the tweets, whatever. I mean, it was not a big deal. And then I didn't see the clip, but I was told that he told his stream that I was acting in bad faith.
Oh, I think he did. I think we watched a clip of that. He might have called you an orbiter of mine. I don't remember if he did that or not, but I think he said that, like, yeah, you're a bad faith. Yeah, he's very sensitive.
He called me a Destiny orbiter?
He might have, but I might be making that up. I don't remember. But I feel like I do remember him talking that. Did he block you on Twitter?
No, he didn't block me, but I sent him a DM. I was like, bro, how are you going to call me bad faith? Like, I wrote this thing. I acknowledged the mistake in the thread. The point that I was making still stood, I believe, but I was making it in a poor way because I was, getting the date wrong on something.
They're literally like, doing the pandemic memes, right? Like, that's. I
mean, the idea that like I've been doing this for almost 14 years now, or over 13 years. I've experienced like meteoric growth and all that stuff, and I don't need to orbit. And I do not care about clout like that. So that's the first I had heard of being called an orbiter. So
Well, anytime he gets like negative criticism, he assumes that it's coming from like my community. He's got like he's really fucking weird.
Right.
Wait,
this is yeah, go ahead.
I'm gonna 2x this. I'm gonna watch this. I'm just curious what he said. It's a 20, or I'm gonna 2x it, so it's 23 seconds. Give me 1 second. I just want to listen to this real quick.
Okay.
See what he said.
I don't think Hutch is good faith, but I don't know what. I think usually he is. Oh, he isn't good faith at all. That's pathetic, dude. Fauci specifically said the letter from Delta played no part in their evaluation. Where does Fauci specifically say the letter from Delta played no part in their evaluation? The transcript be linked. Also, no one's claiming Delta CEO is solely responsible. No one? Bro, really? Like that? I'm saying Delta CEO is individually and solely responsible? Dude, come on, bro. What the fuck? Did you hit your head? Like, what happened? Did you fucking fall down or something? Did you fall down the stairs and like actually fucking hit your head?
Oh, okay. He didn't call you an over. He just said you hit your head and fell.
Yeah, that doesn't. Okay. Honestly, that was kind of tame. Whatever. Like, I thought it was worse than that. I had never seen the clip.
Gotcha. All right.
But anyways, going back to like the CDC quarantine thing. Part of the reason why the CDC implemented these new quarantine standards is because of industries like the healthcare industry, like social services and local services, garbage pickups, electricity, water treatment. All this stuff was going to be hugely impacted by this virus that was going to infect like fucking 10% of the country, 20% of the country or whatever.
Yeah.
And people just assumed the worst when it came to the reasoning for why they implemented the quarantine changes. And it was just, I don't know about you, but I've become so disillusioned recently. I'm just sort of, I still pay attention to politics, but I just don't allow myself to get as invested, because if I stay invested all the time, I'm just going to be a miserable prick.
Because there's so many stupid fucking things being said, like constantly, like just absolutely brainless things. Yeah.
It's tough to deal with. I mean, what do you think about like the situation right now with Ukraine? Have you seen Kyle Kulinski's feed?
Every lefty is like, I can in my sleep, I could just say everything they're gonna say about this. There's not even anything worth watching, right? It's basically like America bad. Anybody that's not America, they might not be good, but America's real bad, and then anything America's doing is bad, and then it's just some variation of that for 10 minutes to get the ad revenue.
It feels like quite the contradiction to say like imperialism bad, but then your position is to do nothing while Russia annexes the entire country of Ukraine.
Well, it's because imperialism is only because they only know imperialism of the U.S. These motherfuckers will literally say shit like, oh, the Soviet Union wasn't imperialistic at all, or that wasn't real communism. Or like, oh, in South America, the U.S. is the only country that's intervened. Cuba, Venezuela, blah, blah. These guys have never done it. Like, it's just like super one side. It's just a really naive. It's just like their whole platform is basically just like fuck America, and then that's it. That's all I care about.
Kulinski said something like, you shouldn't be allowed to talk about the situation in Ukraine without talking about NATO's history, or something like. What history is he talking about now? Do you have any idea what he's talking about? Is there like some bad history with NATO?
NATO is more or less works at the behest of the United States, so NATO history is U.S. history, so probably something to do with the U.S. being a horrible, evil country. That'd be my guess. Keep in mind also from a Soviet from a Russian perspective, like everything that NATO does is kind of like seen as like an aggressive act, right?
Yeah. So I mean, like, do you support the administration's current efforts to, inspire NATO to start bolstering Ukraine's defenses?
Yeah, kind of. I don't know the history or the strategy that well, so it's hard for me to say like what is actually happening. Like I've read a lot of different things about like Russia has. The last thing I read that stuck with me the most is that Russia doesn't have they don't have the political will nor the economy to sustain any sort of war effort in Ukraine, that the civil war in the East is not going as well as they hoped it would, or didn't spark in the way they wanted it to, and that other countries that are NATO countries that are kind of like promising or pouring resources in, and then the threat of sanctions is going to keep Russia from ever going in, and all they're trying to do is basically just like chill Ukraine a bit so that Ukraine kind of like backs off being so friendly to Western countries, and that it's all kind of like a big, not a psyop, but it's a bunch of posturing basically. But then I've also read other things that are saying that like, oh, they don't want to get invaded through Ukraine again, that it's a do or die at this point. If NATO pushes or continues to push into these countries, that it's going to be game over for Russia, so this is like their final stand. So I don't know, I just don't have the historical concept, or not even, I just don't have the geopolitical knowledge to know like what would they actually do. But it seems like from everything I read so far, I'm leaning towards like they're probably never going to invade because they couldn't sustain it, but I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in a similar situation. You and me are both like, neither of us are foreign policy wonks or anything like that. So we're just sort of giving our best guess here. But yeah, I mean, like if you have a fledgling democracy in a really sensitive area of the world, and they're asking for NATO support, that's quite different from like, that's quite a difference between there's quite a difference between that and like United States meddling in like South and Central American governments in like the 70s and 80s, or it's quite different from invading Iraq in 2003. But it all just kind of gets lumped into this one thing under the banner of imperialism, and there's not a lot of room for nuance these days.
Yeah,
so
it's the big populist messaging on both the left and the right is that basically the U.S. can't do anything foreign ever because it's all imperialistic evil, and we just need to be a totally like isolationist country that maybe sends foreign aid, and that's it. Yeah.
What do you think about? Here's another thing that's pissed me off about the Biden administration, and it's not just the administration, but it's also Schumer.
Yeah.
But the recent push for like voting rights stuff just seems like performative bullshit to me, because there was no possible way that was ever going to get done. But Biden felt so much pressure from voting rights groups, activist groups, to appear as though he was addressing the situation, that he went out there, and him and Schumer, like, you know, obviously Build Back Better fell through. And so I guess in order to save face, they decided to publicly say, we're going to try to get this done by Martin Luther King Jr. Day. They fucking knew it wasn't going to get done, but they had to be seen as though they were pursuing this. I just think it's like, I don't like being lied to. You don't need to lie to people. You can just tell people. I wish they would just tell people the truth. We have this archaic Senate rule, the Senate rule that prevents major legislation from getting done. It is notoriously difficult to do anything major in this country, apart from reconciliation packages, which are only temporary measures. They won't last forever. And this is the truth of the matter. We just do not have the votes to get that done. I don't know if politically that's just like a losing message to put out there, like, we can't do this, you need to scale your expectations.
That sounds like
I wish that we didn't live in a country where we, like, they need to lie to people. Like, there was no point in doing that. It just made them look like weaklings. It just
nobody has
like
any
losers.
idea like what the extent is of what the government can or can't do anyway, right? Like, all the popularity right now is basically having to do with like inflation and the economy and whatnot, which the president more or less can't really do anything about. But like, people will blame or credit the president for like high or low gas prices, or, you know, or high or low unemployment, even if they haven't passed any legislation. So it's like, just is the way that it is. Something that I think is a weird bind. We might have argued about this at one point, or maybe you disagree with me. I don't know. But something else that's a little bit strange is I don't think voting rights are actually that important in the United States when it comes to voter turnout. And there's been more and more research that's come out on this. It seems like when you looked at all the mail-in ballot stuff, and you start to look at all the elections where mail-in ballots have been utilized, it doesn't really favor one party or the other at all. Like, Democrats or Republicans don't tend to benefit from it. And in places, I think, where they're expanding voting rights and getting more people to vote, that doesn't necessarily favor Democrats either. So the idea that there's been like this huge, I don't want to say conspiracy like conspiratorial, but like when there's been like this huge plot by the Republicans to kind of like suppress the vote on the Democratic side, it doesn't seem like it's doing a lot to fight for more and more rights to vote is actually helping get more representation, or helping any individual party. So it seems like that might be like a lot of political capital expended on a project that doesn't do much and only like emboldens Republicans to like show up at the polls and vote against it or whatever.
We have had this conversation before, and we did disagree, and we do disagree a little bit. I mean, I don't disagree with you because I've seen similar, I've read similar articles and seen similar studies talking about how it's not necessarily cut and dry who benefits when you expand access to voting. It depends on the election. It depends on the district.
A lot of stuff.
There's all kinds of variables to consider. It doesn't universally benefit Democrats. That being said, I think the fact that Republicans have been so quick to jump to these totally unnecessary measures that do in fact make voting more difficult, in order to address a problem that does not exist. And these people at the highest levels probably understand that it, like, this idea of widespread voter fraud is just not something that there's no evidence for it whatsoever, but their constituents are demanding that they do it because they tune into Tucker Carlson or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. That it's more like you don't really do it because you're going to win off it. It's just like you do it because that's what your constituents want, because they feel really strongly about it, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that is worth pushing back against. Like when you have areas where they're closing polling stations, and then you have, like, can you imagine waiting 8 hours in line to vote? Like, I've never, ever had to wait longer than 15 minutes to vote in California.
Yeah, for sure.
I think it should be like that everywhere in the country. So I think that is worth.
It's a thing to think about, but the question is, like, let's say we can either do that or anything else that might be like a more meat and potatoes issue that might get you like actual people that are more favorable towards your party. I think that's the issue, because people are like, okay, well, fuck, like, why would we spend so much time on voting rights when maybe we could push like a $2 higher minimum wage or something? And like, these are changes that people will notice and then will like be more likely to vote for us over potentially. But I don't know. It's all guessing at this point. It's hard to say.
Yeah, but it's like you said. I think most people right now are basing their approval or disapproval of this administration on issues like inflation and gas.
Yeah,
gas prices.
I think it's all economic.
So like,
right now.
what can the party or what can the administration do to make it seem as though they're working on the issue, knowing full well that they're very limited in how they can, fix these prices? Like, what could they do?
Nothing right now. They just have to hope and pray. I don't think there's anything legislatively right now. I mean, the Federal Reserve can hike interest rates a bit, and we probably have to stop doing stimulus because the economy is super overheated at the moment. But I think the expanded UI is done now. But otherwise, you just have to sit and wait and see. I don't think there's anything that the government can really do. Yeah.
I mean, what if they just like? Do you think they should just fully lean into the culture war stuff? What else can they do? Like if they can't,
I don't know right now.
There's no meaningful legislation that can get done anymore in this Congress. Like I think they will pass like parts of Build Back Better like in piecemeal. Like I think they will like do some stuff. Like they'll move on climate. They'll do some other stuff too. But it's just obviously it's not going to be the same kind of. So there's no more major legislation that can get done basically.
I guess
so
I just don't know right now, like, what are the
then-
culture war things that people feel very strongly about right now in America? What do you think?
CRT. I mean, that's like, I don't know if it's as relevant post Virginia and New Jersey, but I think it's still definitely relevant to a certain degree.
The Republicans were good at like at getting that going, but I like one thing that I think is an issue is Democrats need to be more eager or more keen to just drop dog shit optic things, because I feel like sometimes Democrats are too keen, or maybe we've let the far left wing hijack the messaging too much, and it's cringe. And I think that the Democrats have to be more willing to moderate a little bit on some things.
How is the far left hijacked like broad national messaging? Like maybe on Twitter, but like.
Yeah, so hold on. I don't let this slide anymore. I used to hope that it would more, but I don't think we can just say only on Twitter anymore, because I think Twitter is becoming a more and more relevant area where politics are being discussed, and I think things from Twitter are carrying more into real life. I think it's gotten to that point to where if there's a massive trend on Twitter, I don't think we can just say, oh, it's just on Twitter. Like, I would argue that right now there are a lot of Republicans where when you say, who is the Democratic Party, a lot of them are thinking like, if it's not older people thinking Pelosi, it's like moderate and younger people thinking AOC. And I think that is an issue. To be fair to AOC, she's gotten a lot better at her messaging, but I do think...
Way better.
Yeah, way better. Way better. Way better than I ever thought she would have in the 2 years, whatever she's been in, or 6. I don't even know at this point how long it's been.
Yeah, she's shrewd.
But yeah, I like, man, dude, I feel like the CRT thing it was an opportunity for everybody to smuggle their baggage in for what they wanted to argue. People on the very far left were using it to argue for some genuinely dog shit ideas, and people on the far right were using it to argue for like some genuinely dog shit ideas. I don't know. It's hard to say like how well national conversations go compared to like online debates or whatever. But I think you have to be very quick to admit that like there is some very cringe shit that some teachers try to push. You call that out for being cringe shit, but that doesn't mean that we need to stop teaching about like slavery or something.
I think, yeah, that's a perfectly reasonable position. I think that's like the sensible position.
Yeah.
But I still like, can you give me an example of how you think the far left has hijacked democratic messaging on particular issues?
I haven't followed. I don't know if culture war stuff has been as much recently. I know that during the last set of elections, it was the ACAB stuff. No, not necessarily. It was the defund the police stuff and the socialism stuff. Those two huge things dominated a lot of national talking points in a very negative way for Democrats.
Yeah. Well, I think the data bears that out now. Like
Yeah.
there was a cost to that in terms of like House seats.
I'm trying to think of recently, all of the attacks on student debt is, I don't know how much, if that's perforated like the mainstream media, but like the obsession with student debt with millennials on Twitter, I think is kind of a negative or kind of silly.
I don't think a lot of people are talking about student debt on a regular basis.
That's good.
I
It's
don't fucking
everywhere on
know.
the
I
internet. It
spend
might
all
not be
my
in like the
time-
main media, so that would be good, but yeah.
It's not even a popular proposal. Like I think
not.
a lot of people think it's way more popular than it is. But when you look at the polling, I think there is like a decent amount of support. I think it's like 60% support for giving a certain amount of student loan aid if the person whose loan is being forgiven engages in some kind of civil service.
Yeah.
I think that's when you see it at its highest popularity. But in terms of blanketly forgiving student loan debt, that is like abysmal polling.
Yeah.
That being said, this administration has shown a willingness to bend a little bit when it came to, like, he extended the student loan payments like I think 3 or 4 times throughout his presidency. I think they're scheduled to pick back up in April or
And
May.
I think there has been some targeted forgiveness, hasn't there?
Yeah, I think he's forgiven $10 billion worth of student loans to certain groups of people, which is like a drop in a bucket when we're talking about, I think, $2 trillion worth of debt collectively. But he has actually forgiven billions of dollars in student debt. But I mean, like, no one ever talks about that. Like, there's so many things that this administration has done that no one has talked about. Like, how many people were talking about drone strikes like a year and a half ago? Like the Bernie or bust people. How many times did we see like the meme about, you know, the drone dropping bombs and then the drone on the right with a rainbow flag dropping bombs?
Yeah.
I'm sure you've seen that like 1,000 times.
A million times posted by people. Yeah.
And here we are, like a little over a year into Biden's presidency, and he has largely ended the drone war. They're not doing, like, they're hardly doing it compared to like for what they did under Trump. I mean, under Trump, the civilian casualties in Afghanistan from drone strikes spiked over 300%. And we still get subjected to this stupid fucking meme. It drives me insane.
I think that's an internet thing, but yeah, I agree. I do see it a lot. It's really annoying.
But I mean, as much as this stuff dominates conversations on Twitter, I would have to see like how, like, I'm open to what you're saying right now in terms of how these things can bleed into, you know, because somebody sees something on Twitter and then maybe they go to work and then they're having a conversation about politics with their friends and then they, you know, they say, well, you know, actually, and then they repeat some false thing that they saw on Twitter and then so like I can see it bleeding into the mainstream, but I'm not super convinced. Like, do you watch a lot of mainstream media like MSNBC or Fox? Or
I haven't been lately. Once the election season picks up, I'll probably be reading more again. Yeah, but I've been skewing away from it because there's not much going on right now. Yeah.
I usually watch some like when I'm making breakfast, like 30 minutes just to kind of get a sense of like what those conversations look like. And I have not seen the far left like hijack those institutions at all.
Yeah, I think right now almost all of the conversation for the past several months has been like obsessively focused on the economy. That's what everybody is feeling and talking about right now. Things like, because when things like gas and shit start increasing, like that's, nobody gives a fuck about what's happening anywhere in the world. Like Russia could be ready to nuke Ukraine and nobody would care if like gas is like, you know, on average like $3.50 a gallon or whatever. So I think those have been the topics that have been dominating the media.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I think it's one of the reasons why Jimmy Carter's presidency went down in flames was because of gas prices. I think that was one of the driving forces, and gas shortages too. I think that there were like hella long lines at gas stations back then, and he got punished for that. So,
yeah.
I mean, I don't know. Like, how do you feel about like the prospects for like the next 3 years? It's not looking good for me.
It's totally going to depend on how the economy is doing. If like inflation flips, or if the economy flips and like the inflation starts to get a lot better and everything starts to alleviate and get better, the reality is that I think right now the economy is doing really well. Like wage gains among working class and middle class people, I think they had the highest wage gains, I think last year or last quarter than they have in like 40 years.
Yeah.
So the wage squeeze is real as the labor force participation drops. The unemployment right now is like below 4%, I think. The markets have all been doing phenomenally. We freaked the fuck out when there was like a 4% drop, but the reality is they were up like 25% last year. It was massive gains across the entire market. Like all in all, the economy, the picture of the economy is doing pretty well. There have been a couple people that have been a little bit fucked, but like just because of the inflation and seeing some prices go up, people are feeling bad. I feel really bad because nobody seems to know when like things have gone well, or they don't feel that as much, but when anything goes slightly wrong, they get like really upset about it. So as long as the inflation can come down a bit, I think we'd be in a good spot, but I don't know if there's time for that right now. It's hard to say if that'll happen, you know, with everybody getting sick and the supply chain and everything getting so fucked on everything. It's hard to say.
And I think that the Democrats are massively disadvantaged when it comes to messaging, because you're right. Like, and like I mentioned the drone war and you talked about like wage growth. There are all kinds of good things that have been happening in the last year, but the Democratic Party has to contend not only with like the Fox News and the Ben Shapiro's and all that, they also have to contend with the if you want to call them the far left. But I think like if you want to use another general term, you could say like progressives. They haven't been very kind to Joe Biden in the last year, and with like the drone memes, that's just one example of like 1,000. And so like the Democratic Party has to contend with both of those at the same time. Whereas you see, it's not 100% solidarity on the right, but it is. They have way more solidarity when it comes to messaging.
So
and staying on
curious.
message and being disciplined.
How much are they like still rallied around Trump? Is that
How much are is the Republican
the
Party?
Republican Party still
base?
seems like, yeah, the Republican Party and base like still seems like pretty big on Trump. Still seems to be a pretty popular figurehead in the party.
You know, it's interesting. His numbers aren't as high as you would expect them to be, like within the Republican Party. And I cite polls off the top of my head. I could be wrong. So if I'm wrong about this, like feel free to fact check me or anybody in the chat. But I think they did a poll of Republicans and they asked who they want the nominee to be in 2024. And I think it was close to 50% said Donald Trump, which is quite surprising to me.
It is a little surprising. Do you think it's really that low? Or do you think it's just he hasn't been in the media for a while, and if he comes back, all of a sudden everybody will be hyped as fuck again?
I mean, he kind of has been in the media a lot. He's constantly doing media interviews and holding rallies, but he's doing like 2 or 3 media interviews every single week, which is just wild, because typically if a president loses or the day they leave office, they fuck off. Like Obama said like a few things that were sort of like mildly critical of Trump during Trump's first term, and even that was a huge departure from the norm in this country.
That is true, actually. Yeah, because normally once presidents are out of office, they're gone. They shut the fuck up. Even Bill Clinton didn't say much, I think, until the ending part of Hillary's campaigning. But yeah, and that was his fucking wife. So
this is all a part of the tradition of a peaceful transfer of power, and I think that tradition exists for a good reason. This is why like a lot of people got pissed at Michelle Obama for being like buddy with George W. Bush, but it's actually in her position. That's actually a really good thing for the country, even if it doesn't make you feel good as someone who loathes George W. Bush with every fiber of your being. That tradition actually does do wonders to prevent things like what we saw on January 6th. But yeah, this former president has been totally abnormal. And I think he has put himself front and center. He can't tweet as much, so that he's not getting as much headlines. But yeah, it does surprise me. I would have thought those numbers would have been like 70-80% want him to run again. But that doesn't exactly inspire confidence. Like I feel like if he runs again in 2024, that's a gift to Democrats. If it's DeSantis or someone else, I don't know who's going to win. It's very possible that Biden loses.
It's kind of weird because like, if he technically him running and winning in a way might be like a good thing for Democrats, because if we're what
are you getting into like accelerationist stuff here?
No.
Okay.
Just shrewd political strategy. If it is the case that Democrats are absolutely going to lose the next election, Trump is probably one of the best guys to lose to, because if he wins, he can't run for a second term, so they don't have an incumbent advantage in the next election. So
okay, but then you also have an unhinged maniac who no longer feels pressure to stay in some kind of lane because he wants to get reelected. Now he doesn't have to worry about that. He can just do whatever the fuck he wants.
His conversations with people before were flagrant. Did you hear on the phone him talking to the Georgian governor? We need to find 40,287 votes. What the fuck is wrong? Like, an absolute disregard, like an absolute Sigma male in terms of his approach to everything. Like, just blatantly doesn't give a fuck about any of the processes. Like asking Pence, like, bro, do you think you could do something about this election shit? Like, or like still saying that, we're gonna flip Arizona. It's gonna happen, 4 years later. Like, Jesus.
I don't know who got cucked harder, Pence or Sessions. It's close. It's definitely close.
Sessions got to live his little fucking dream. I don't know. Fuck Sessions.
Probably Sessions, because Sessions had to deal with Trump's abuse for like a
4
year
years.
and a half. No, it was like a year and a half before.
Oh, publicly, sure.
But yeah, both of them were totally loyal to Trump, and they both basically had their political futures destroyed. I mean, Sessions was like 142 anyway, so I don't know how much that matters. But Pence delusionally thinks that he has a shot at the presidency, as does Ted Cruz and Kirsten Sinema. I mean, there's just so much delusional narcissism in Washington, D.C. But yeah, I mean, we'll see. I mean, I don't know if there's going to be people that actually challenge Trump, because I think it's safe to say the Republican leadership would prefer if he was not the nominee. But they will fall in line if he announces. Like, I highly doubt DeSantis or Pompeo or whoever the fuck would try to get in his way during a primary.
Yeah, I don't think it's even that like the Republican leadership has a strong of an opinion about it. I think they're gonna immediately follow wherever the base is. That's why you had so many people brown-nose Trump so much after talking so much shit during the primaries, because when you see how popular a guy like that is, you're gonna be behind him no matter what.
It's just really wild to me that you can have someone like Trump do what he did on January 6th, not even on January 6th, but in the run up and in the months after, and he's still doing it right now. And then you see these snapshot polls, which are worthless at this point. You know, we're 3 years out from the next election, but you see these snapshot polls of Trump beating Biden if the election took place today. Like what? Like
Biden will win Arizona.
How many people collectively can just forget like how bad that got because like gas prices got a little high, or maybe there isn't enough bread at the grocery store, and all of a sudden that matters more than these, you know, like the call from Georgia, like these blatant, flagrantly corrupt actions.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's weird because it's just weird. Voters are very strange, you know? Sometimes people will say shit like, voters care about meat and potato issues, you know? That's what they care about the most. They care about the economic issues, you know? But like my mom, that she is a single issue voter on some things like abortion. She wouldn't give a fuck who a candidate was. If they came out as pro-choice, she's never voting for that motherfucker. And I know there are other Americans that feel single issue on certain things. And when you have Trump, who's like, he's selling his personality more than any policies, right? Because legislatively, he didn't really get anything done. And I don't even know what the fuck policies this guy actually stands for. But like, as a person, I think that's who they're voting for. Trump as a person, you know?
I mean, the tax cuts were a big deal. And
that was his one accomplishment, yeah.
For his party, they were a big deal. Optically, I mean, like 90% of the Republican voter base probably were neutrally affected by the tax cuts. But then also the Supreme Court nominations as well.
Yeah, but I mean, like, I do give credit for the Supreme Court. I mean, like, it's his job, right? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. That's not exactly. It doesn't take a keen political strategist to nominate, you know, a Gorsuch or a Kavanaugh. You just do what your base is going to be happy with. But yeah. I mean, was there anything else to talk about when it came to Biden here?
No, man. If it feels like there's like a path forward where if we lose the midterms, which seems pretty likely, nothing is going to happen legislatively, which means we're probably going to lose the presidency, which means we're back with Republicans everywhere again.
I think it's like, I feel comfortable talking about being totally blackpilled on the midterms. I don't feel comfortable talking about being totally blackpilled on the presidency in 2024, because again, I think if they nominate Trump, that will be a gift to Democrats, because like as unhinged as he was before, he's even more unhinged now.
True.
And I think that as soon as you start seeing more of him in the media, it will refresh people's memories of like how fucking crazy that was. I might be totally naive to think that, but
it's hard to know, because it could be the Republicans, yes, you know, like, nah, this is too much, or they might be like, that's my guy. I miss that guy.
Yeah, but you need more than the Republicans. I think like there were enough independents that got turned off after January 6th that it's going to be hard to bring them back into the fold. Things would have to get really shitty. Like, let's say another variant comes in and it's even worse than Delta or Omicron or whatever, and it just completely fucks everything up, and there's more supply chain issues and there's more inflation. Then at that point, yeah, Biden is completely fucked. Even if he's advocating for the correct policies, he will be completely fucked in that. So it's completely impossible to plan for. Or if there's no more variants and then we get treatment and therapeutics, like bring the death rate down to like a real minimal amount. I know that the military was working on a universal vaccine that will protect against all the different variants, and they're in the trial phases right now. So there's a lot of reasons to be optimistic about where we're headed when it comes to that, but there are so many unknowables that trying to make any predictions 3 years out, it just seems like kind of silly.
Yeah. Yeah, well, anything else?
I mean, I don't think so. I mean, like, how do you feel about like the state of Twitch politics these days? I sort of backed off a little bit from.
Well, I mean, when you say Twitch politics, I'm thinking there's like me, Hasan, and then there's like all of the other people that cover stuff.
No,
Am I being really facetious?
I mean, all of it.
I don't know. I feel like Hasan's takes are probably some of the dumbest, most dog shit takes I've ever heard in my life. Legitimately, he's like not even malicious, just really stupid. So there's that, and then he kind of sets the tone for the platform, and then I'll give a take, and then all the other political people will kind of like argue about other things. Everything's been kind of like slow right now since Biden's presidency. There's not crazy shit going on, so the conversations are getting more and more esoteric, I guess.
Less politics, more MasterChef, that kind of thing.
Kind of, yeah, or just like over random things about like social issues or whatnot. But
did you see his conversation with Christian Walker? Did you watch any of that?
oh yeah, I did. God, he's just so dumb. He just needs to accept what he is and just not talk to and not challenge anybody ever on anything.
I mean, listen, I don't love Hasan's takes much of the time, but and I was worried about the thing with Christian Walker. I still like, part of it rubs me the wrong way a little bit because he was like super buddy with him. Like he was very friendly with him. But he pushed back. I thought he did a decent job pushing back against like the anti-trans talking points, to the point where like midway through the conversation, some of my discomfort with how buddy he was with him sort of faded away a little bit. I was like, okay, well, there is some usefulness to this, because I don't think Christian Walker looked like all
Just
that
renewed my Dalibin membership,
reasonable
Nathan W.
throughout that debate, and like maybe Hasan changed some of this guy's viewers' minds. So I saw the utility in that.
Okay, that's
I thought
interesting. I thought that all of the trans stuff I thought was really bad. It felt like for a lot of questions he just kind of like remarked on what he said and then laughed and then tried to like move on, or he didn't have a really good. I felt like he didn't have a good understanding sometimes of how to push back on a lot of the trans points. I think his trans community got really mad at that conversation too, because he started banning a lot of them in his chat afterwards, because a lot of them were pretty critical. Yeah, there was a huge thread that showed up on his subreddit that had, I think it was over 300 or 400 comments maybe, and then he was like mass banning trans people from his chat afterwards who were complaining that they thought he didn't handle the conversation very well. So, but I don't know, maybe that's just my perspective.
It could have gone worse from my perspective. Could have gone worse.
Could have, yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah. I think how do you feel our semi-annual check-in went?
It feels great, man.
I feel like if I'm gonna orbit you, I should be probably trying to orbit you more, right? Like one check-in every 9 months.
At least like once a month, you know. How do you feel about the new Call of Duty? You're enjoying it a lot, I think.
Yeah. I mean, like, I think like it was like 10 years ago, one Call of Duty MP could have sustained me for an entire year. And I'm just a different kind of gamer now, where I do enjoy like a lot of single player stuff now. Like I'm playing Red Dead right now and just having a great time with it. And, but I think like, I think this year's MP was like one of the stronger ones recently, but I just think that a lot of people are moving away from traditional MP. So I think
into like Warzone type stuff, or what do you mean?
Yeah, more people are playing Apex and Fortnite and Warzone than they're playing traditional MP. I mean, Halo is pretty fun. Did you have a chance to play Halo Infinite MP?
I have not done Halo at all yet. Did you ever enjoy any of the Warzone, like any of the Battle Royale games, or no?
Yeah, I play Warzone constantly. Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, I have a fun time with it. I'm looking for more stuff to do than just play Call of Duty these days. But yeah, I'd say it's pretty good. Yeah.
Gotcha. What do you mean by more stuff? Like more games or like real life stuff?
Yeah, just some variety. Like I can't play Warzone like 6 hours a day every day. Like that's why I've been doing like 2 hours of single player to start the streams and then move into Warzone. I just have more fun with it. But yeah, before I could play like 6-8 hours of like Destiny and Fortnite, and I had no problem with it. But
do you ever play Rust?
Getting older, or... Rust looks a little complicated to me.
Oh, okay,
like,
gotcha.
It would be difficult. I feel like it would be difficult to learn. So I tried playing Tarkov a few times, and it's just that menu system, and just there's so much stuff to learn when it comes to that game, where I kind of gave up after a couple weeks. I'm like, yeah, I'm not gonna do this.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. All right. Well, yeah, good checking in with you. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're enjoying Miami.
Yeah, I love you, buddy. Let me know when you plan a trip down here. We can get some food or something.
Yeah, I'll hit you up. I hit up your pal Supreme, so I think I'm gonna get lunch with him and IRI in a couple of weeks. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah,
they seem like reasonable guys.
Yeah, the IRI guy is super cool. He's like a huge fucking loser nerd when it comes to like following all of like the House races and Senate shit. So he's an awesome guy to talk to. He knows so much about like all the political shit. I super love that dude. Him, and then Wicked Supreme has like a background in like intelligence, I guess. I don't know how much he says, whatever. Yeah, I don't know anything secret, but like he's a really cool dude too. He knows like a lot of stuff. He's like a really smart guy. Both of those guys are like two of the coolest people in the politics arena. So I really like both of
Yeah,
those guys.
I think IRI, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think his stream is doing like much better these days. Because when I checked in like a year ago, when I was on one of Dylan's panels with him one time. And so we followed each other on Twitter, and sometimes I would watch his streams, and he was only getting like 15 viewers like a year ago. And now when I check into his streams when he's doing those like C-SPAN, watching the Senate debate and stuff, he's got like 250 viewers watching him now. So it's a decent amount of growth in a year. Cool, all right, man. Well, enjoy the rest of your week. Take it easy.
Yeah, have fun. Be careful, buddy.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.